What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Great Lakes Outdoors podcast. Me and my dad are sitting here just getting done with a pretty dang good hunt with a very special guest, Shawn Stahl, the birthday boy. Shawn, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good, and that was an awesome hunt.
I've asked Brian, I think 8 times already, hoping that you had fun on your birthday.
How could you not have fun? I mean, we're hunting, we're outside,
right?
And I mean, it's February, and we're still hunting, and we had 2 little kids with us.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was pretty cool.
We shoot a band. She gets the band.
When did the boy leave? When they got the food?
At lunch.
Okay,
yeah,
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
I kind of I was like, did he walk off?
Yeah, that's why I when I got back from
was he out chasing
around,
a cripple and we didn't catch him both? Or
no
what?
clue where he went.
Walking on the road looking for a bird,
which is surprising that the boy left and then
the girl stayed.
The little girl stayed, but
I think the mom made her leave.
Yeah.
It made him leave because he's young.
But I mean, it was cool just to see the excitement in him.
Oh yeah.
I've said this a lot of times: is I get numb to the actual process of setting up the blind, shooting birds, and doing that. And when you see the passion or the light bulb going out and the fire starting to burn, and other people, especially little kids, I mean, that gets me jacked up.
Yeah, for sure.
It was awesome, and I wouldn't have thought any other way. When you called me over as soon as the hunt got done about the band, and Scott just texted me after we found out the information on it, that she's still smiling ear to ear about the whole thing. Yeah. Just to have that whole kind of thing play out for her, and I don't know, pretty special hunt she won't forget.
Yeah, like those things are memories that those are foundation building blocks for that kid
for sure.
And getting them in the outdoors, and that's something we don't have enough of. Our hunter recruitment rate in this state is below 1, and below 1 means we're losing hunters. So the more opportunity we have to get kids out there and make a positive experience, and that's what I was telling somebody. When I introduced my kid, I did it all wrong. I mean, we were out there all day grinding it out, and he's ready to go. No, they're gonna fly, and now he goes, but it's not like he doesn't have the fire like I do. So,
well, the cool thing about too is it wasn't a little boy, it was a little girl. Yeah. And her being out there with her dad, and I'm sure Scott just really appreciate just being able to hunt with his kids.
Oh, and they were right down in the catbird seat in that end, so they could see everything. Like we're calling, and we're crosswinding them, so they're kind of coming up, and we can't see the whole show. Like, I'm sure that what they saw or what she saw was pretty dang cool.
As soon as that first volley kind of came through, and they set it up, it seemed like perfectly down at that end of the blind. Mm-hmm. I mean, that alone they should have been freaking out about. Yeah. And it's so hard because they're so excited and they're wanting to look out at the birds and see what's going on, and it gets tough.
Yeah, but look what she did. She sat in the blind all day, all morning.
Yeah. I didn't think, like he said, he goes, they'll probably, when their mom comes by, they'll probably both leave. And
but then she went out and she was picking up shells. She wanted to pick up all the shells in front of the blind. Mm-hmm. She wanted to go out and pick up the birds, so we didn't have a dog this morning.
But in the whole picking up the shell thing, it gave her a purpose, but it's also teaching them the right way to do it.
Cleaning up.
Yeah, leave
without her knowing.
Yeah, well, leave no trace. We go into the field, pick up everything, get out of there. Farmer comes in the spring, he doesn't even know we're there.
Correct.
We just kind of had a thing the other day. We hunted with our local DNR officer, and I didn't know this. You knew this about our main farmer, about us picking up stuff. The farmhand came out. You want to kind of just say?
Well, it was it's like Shawn said. It's very gratifying when somebody else says something about you that you don't even think about. But I walked into one of the barns, and the farmer says, "Hey, one of my farmhands just come in here and was talking about you guys out in the field, and you guys were out there picking up all the wads." I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, I told him that's what you guys do. You would never know they were there. We're out there not just picking up the shells, we're picking up the wads. When we see them, obviously you're not going to find them all. I mean, there's just no way to find every wad that you shoot. But I thought that was a pretty good testament to our group and how we handle things and to make sure we're doing it the right way. So
it's one of those things for me. We do it with not trying to get recognition of it, I guess. Just do it just because that's the way it's supposed to be.
Well, it's the right thing. It's the right thing to do. And if people just do the right thing, this world would be a whole lot better place, right?
Why do you think that Michigan is under 1% for hunters, like going down?
Well, most states are. I mean, all across the country. It's not just Michigan.
Why do you think that? What's the biggest
It's just so many draws now for kids to do other things and get into. I mean, like, look, when you and I were kids, we didn't have these. No. Like, you know, I mean, you look around and like little 6-8-year-old kids are running around with these and iPads, and they're just getting into other things. And you know, and it goes back to, you know, when we were kids, you had to be 12 years old to start hunting in Michigan for small game, and then 14 for deer. Well, you know, I used to be on the CWAC commission, and they used to have the chief of law enforcement come in and give a speech, and he was down at the Flyway Council meeting, and they were talking about ages of kids that can hunt, and we were the oldest one. You know, some of the southern states were like 6, 8, parents consent, that kind of thing. And our chief of law enforcement, he's like, you know, he's being honest. He says, hey, look, I told him, I said, you can't do that. These kids are going to shoot people. They're going to be hurting people. And they're like, whoa, back up. Like, we don't have that problem.
Right.
He said, the people that are having these gun accidents and making mistakes are the older people that should know better, that just get lazy and make mistakes. You know, these kids know only what they're taught. Right. Like, always point a gun into the sky, always have the safety on, never have your finger in the safety, never pointing a loaded gun at anything you don't intend to shoot. Well, you know, all that stuff. That's all the stuff that's drilled. That's all they know.
Right.
So they're safe, you know, and they've always have an adult sitting next to them. He's like, wow, you're right. You know, and that's when we started seeing the ages going down, for in Michigan from 12, and now I think if a kid can hold a gun, they can do the apprentice deal and whatnot.
Right.
But what they were trying to say is that at 6 years old, at 8 years old, to a child, their parents are their heroes. That's who they look up to. They don't know it. They haven't really seen a lot in the world. That's who they look up to. But at like 10, 12 years old, they're starting the rest of the world starts shaping up to them. They start seeing stuff, and they start looking up to other things. They look up to musicians, that, you know, rappers. They look up to movie stars and all the things that you don't want, you know, that you don't want them to. So they lose that interest in the sport if they can't be out there actively participating. You know what I mean? Like the little girl today, she was there and she was having a great time. She wasn't holding a gun, but it's a whole different experience if they can actually participate in the hunt. And that was their whole deal, is that you need to move this back and let these kids get into the sport before they're already mentally checked out of it. And that has helped to some degree, you know, getting new people into the sport, but it's more and more people got other things to do than be outside.
Do you think that a lot of that issue too is, you know, also the parents just not having the time? Like you said, when we were young, you know, I hunted with my dad when I think I was 10 years old, started squirrel hunting, and it might have been 12. I can't remember exactly. It might have been 12 actually. Yeah. So now it just seems like maybe there's not enough time. You know, everybody has their own agenda and what they're doing, and, you know, just can't get their kids out as much as they can.
And life is busier, and kids are now playing travel sports more than any. I mean, we didn't have that, you know.
Right. So, yeah, there's a lot of dynamics.
Just a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess I never even thought about the sports aspect of it all.
And, you know, just general access is getting tougher. It's just hard. Like, it's even hard to find public land that isn't overcrowded. And it's hard to go out and have a good experience when everything's overcrowded, or you can't knock on the door and get permission. You got to go lease stuff up. Or they, you know, heaven forbid a farmer lets somebody hunt, but they let everybody hunt, you know. Right, it's just the competition has gotten so hard to do, you know.
We've dealt with that quite a bit. Like, people, not so much the leasing part of it all, which thank God for, because, I mean, for leases, it's not no feet down guide service down in Minnesota where there's just constantly birds just rolling through the state, which we got a lot of birds, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing like Minnesota has, where it's a consistent thing where
new birds all the time.
Yeah, you're always getting that roll through. But just people doing it the wrong way once, and then just ruining it all for everybody else. And even like the public land, I preach on here a lot. People want to complain about it, but nobody wants to like put work into it to make it a better area for people to use. And it's
that just gets society's become more of takers than givers.
Yeah,
for the most part, you know, everybody 100%. Wants to take. We were talking about that with, you know, people buying federal duck stamps. You got birders that go out there and they utilize the resource, but they're not giving back. Right. and that's
everybody wants the wetlands.
Everybody wants the freebie and take until
it's gone.
Until it's gone, and then okay, what do you do? I mean, it's like the buffalo.
They're like, what happened?
They shoot all the buffalo, and then they go hunt something else. Right. Well, it's just perpetuating the.
Well, I mean, like Point Muley, I think correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, we're talking about adding on to it, correct, with the National Guard coming in. National Guard? Army Reserve?
Army,
Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, they're coming in, and they're actually going to make another dike wall around it,
out there.
Which is awesome. Just, I don't see a lot of refuges, like areas where we could hold birds, and they don't get the pressure that, I mean, there's nowhere to hide for them, I guess, anymore. And we talked about this, I think it was last week, for the parks, maybe to hunt once or twice a week or whatever it may be. There goes even more habitat that they're not even being able to feel safe in.
Right.
Well, habitat in general is just decreasing so much. Farming practices have changed, tiling, all that stuff. It's getting rid of nesting habitat. You don't have fence rows. Farmers are going in and clearing out fence rows. And farming prices, I think, have made it hard for me, at least, in the side of the state. I live on the west side. Mm-hmm. The farmers will go in there and they'll clear out fence rows, and then they plant everything, and they've gotten their equipment's gotten so good and so big, they're cutting corn or cutting beans. There's a plow coming behind it. They're putting a cover crop in it right away, and it's the birds still use it, but, man, you can't. I mean, you got some fields over there a square mile, and where are you going to hide?
Yeah.
How are you going to set up on that? You go sit up here, and they go, half a mile down in the field and dump in.
How much grain is actually even being left with all the new equipment? Even I just had a conversation with our friend Rick, Chris, about it yesterday. Like, there's no more food even for the birds on top of the wind turbines coming in, the solar panels that are coming in. What I mean, it's a whole different.
But they've adapted too. So
they have. Like
when the early season first started, I think it was in 1987. And when the late season first started in Michigan, I think it was like 88, 89. I wish Joe was here, he could say it, but it was within a year or two. But most of the birds before they had the early season were migrants passing through. Well, they had a different nutritional requirement. They needed that quick energy food to get back on the route and go down. These local birds, when they first started out, they started feeding in the corn, following the other bird, But they've figured out how to eat other things. Like, back when it first started out, we never shot geese in the late season in a green wheat field. And now you will. Same with bean fields. You didn't hardly ever shoot them in bean fields unless it was wet, and now you do.
Right.
On the rivers, a lot of times they don't leave the river. If it gets cold, they don't leave the river. Well, guess what? They're eating there too. You know what they're eating? They're eating shad.
Yeah, right.
They've learned to diversify and figure out, and I swear a lot of times in the late in September, August, they're in there eating grasshoppers too.
For sure.
I mean, just like a turkey would. I mean, they're very opportunistic.
That's one thing that I've mentioned, I think, to you about asking for permission on ponds, whatever it may be. A route you could possibly go to is, hey, they're going to eat all your fry out in that pond. I mean, you might want to get those things off of the pond before you have no fish left, but people don't realize that.
No, you'll see them out there tipping, and they're just eating grass. No, they're not. No, they're chasing the minnows around.
Right, right. It's just it's pretty crazy to think how much it's adapted over time.
Well, to survive, that's what they have to do. Right?
For sure.
You know what I mean? The white-tailed deer, the Canada goose, and the coyote are the three that have really prospered in the urban sprawl and the different farming practices. They're the three that have really, really taken off and taken advantage of, utilizing the spaces as they change.
Well, the change for me is talking to a lot of the farmers we talk to, is the farming community in general is getting older, and the younger generation don't want to take over the farms. They don't want to farm anymore. So they're selling properties out to like the solar fields, the wind fields, to subdivisions.
Big corporate farms.
Big corporate, right. So, and then it becomes just so hard to get on those fields. And, we're starting to lose habitat for a lot of those animals too.
Well, hopefully some of them solar deals start slowing down. Because it's just, that's a mess. your kid and your kid are going to have to deal with the mess that's going to be in 25 years when that stuff is no longer usable.
Yep.
Little Wes is going to be pissed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, look at the wind turbines. They say they're not recyclable. They got to find places to put them.
I mean, this is just a slippery slope to get down. If those things weren't subsidized, the amount, the carbon footprint of them that they take up doesn't offset what they're putting back in. And then, with all the oil that's inside them to lubricate them, all the maintenance that's got to be done, all the oil that was put in them to make the parts, to ship everything, to drive them. It's a joke.
Well, before we get on that slippery slope,
yeah,
Shawn Stahl, host of R&T TV, World Championship caller. Do you want to kind of just tell everybody before we get down the rabbit hole?
What's that?
Who is Shawn Stahl? What is your background? Where did you grow up?
I'm a small town. I grew up in a small town, Southwest Michigan. I grew up hunting public land and knocking on doors like 99% of the people did, and hunted public. We've got the managed, the state of Michigan has 7 managed waterfowl areas, and I kind of go on a tangent here. We have 7 managed waterfowl areas in the state of Michigan. 5 of them are on the east side. 5 of them are managed for mostly ducks. The ones on the west side where I'm from are goose refuges. So I grew up hunting public, and just kind of built from there and just started hunting with buddies and traveling around. Then I started contest calling because the guys around the managed area where I was said, hey, you need to call in contest. Well, I don't know what a contest is, but I'll try it. So I started calling contests, traveling around the country, doing good, meeting other people, networking, hunting around, hunting everywhere, different places. And that's kind of led into, I had a full-time job, and I was a manufacturing engineer in the office furniture industry on the west side, and the economy went on and just took a dump. And I had to find something else to do, and I had a background manufacturing engineering and dealing with designing and building and all that stuff. And I went to work in the outdoor industry, went to work for Avery Outdoors, went to China, did all that stuff. So just the networking on that, and then ended up working for Rich and Tone. But back to the Michigan deal, I travel so much anymore that I don't get to hunt around home, and that's what we've been trying to do. Brian and I is trying to do a Michigan show, right? Because Michigan is really diverse. For one, I mean, I don't know miles wise. I was going to try to figure it out, but if you're going from my house in Southwest Michigan all the way up to Copper Harbor, and you're looking at about 9.5, 10-hour drive. That's a long way, yep. And there's a lot of diversity. You can do anything from sea duck hunting, diver hunting, mallard hunting, and some flooded timber on some of our managed areas. You can do that. Flooded corn, just like you could, like some of the Grand Pass and some of the Fountain Grove and that stuff in Missouri. It looks just like that, managed just like that. And some of them shoot, back in the heyday, 10 to 14,000 ducks on some of these places. So you've got that opportunity. Then you've got the Canada geese. We don't just have the migrants that come through here. We got the molt migrants also. We have the local geese. And the molt migrants, the more and more of these Canada geese proliferate in these southern states, those subadults, the non-breeders, will molt and go up to Hudson Bay, up in the the Boreal area, spend the summer and come back. So the more and more they proliferate down there, the more and more opportunity we have. So bottom line, in the state of Michigan, you can hunt from September 1st to this year, February 14th over by my house. Yeah. February 10th over here, February 14th. That's crazy.
It's insane.
That's insane. And it's sad that I don't get to hunt this state as much as I do or have. And we try to make a point out of it this year because we really have some good waterfowl in here.
Well, just like Lake Erie alone, the amount of divers that are overlooked on the lake itself, I mean, it's insane.
All over. I mean, you can follow the lake all the
Huron,
way up.
Like, St. Clair,
like Old Squaw and Scoters. I mean, they're all over the lake.
Right.
It's just a matter of having the equipment and the balls to go out there and get after them.
Yeah.
Well, that's
try to stay warm.
Yeah. I mean, can you think of any other state in the Midwest where you could shoot puddle ducks, divers, sea ducks, and geese?
Absolutely not.
There's not many. You have to get out west, like way west,
you got to
California.
go all the way, yeah. And you literally have an opportunity somewhere in this state at certain times to be able to go. I mean, I'm going to go sea duck hunting in Michigan.
Right.
It's kind of one of those things where I like it being like an untold secret, I guess, in Michigan with how many people don't travel here, but at the same time, going back to the numbers in the state, you kind of want to push that more out there for people to understand.
It's a catch-22. Nobody likes somebody hunting next to them.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we need people hunting.
Well, for me, my aspect of that is, or my thought process is, well, then do better.
Yeah.
Go out there, scout more, or beat that next guy out there. I mean,
I like hunting fringes. I like being away from the people. I'd rather go hunt less birds with less people than a lot of birds with a lot of people.
That's one nice thing that where we're at, and very fortunate. I mean, there might have been two, and Brian and Chris can also contest to this, where we don't hear another shot around us. So the only people that are really pressuring our birds is us. I mean, there might be a guy here and there in just some random field that's sky busting.
Well, me and Kyle started hunting out in the water when we first started hunting. So that's where we kind of started, and it just started becoming more and more, I'm getting up at 3 a.m., I'm going to go hit a spot. You get out, you get your spot. Here comes 5:30, the sun's coming up, half hour before shooting light, here comes a boat, parks down 100 yards from you.
Yeah,
and we're out there with a rowboat.
Yeah, and it's so it morphed into something different where we've got to try something different because this is just it's getting so hard. Like to your point,
that's why I try to stay kind of ahead of what's going on, the current fads. That's why a couple of years ago I went and bought a big boat, put a covered blind on it. Just try to. That was when COVID hit and all the kids, nobody was going to school. They had to 3 or 4 bags of skinnies in the back and a roll-up, A-frame in the back of the truck, just running around beating on doors. I mean, it's hard to compete with that aggression,
100%,
and just trying to find, a niche to get out and do something. And, man, I've had a ball. And it helps keep things fresh because I like we were talking earlier, you get a little numb. I mean, you drop when my crew and I roll into town and we drop the trailer door, everybody's got a job. We don't even hardly talk to each other. Everybody knows what they do. It's really mechanical to the point that it's numbing. Like I need other people to, like that little kid today, to get me excited, about what's going on and why we're really out there. And it's nice to go out there and do these other things and hunt out of a boat, just walk into a wood duck slough or, just something like that that's different. I've done that a lot this year.
I thought that was pretty cool today. We were talking and again, this is just meeting you today and just, talking about different things, how much you enjoy hunting with different people. It's like the flag that you saw today. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. I never seen something like, I never seen that before. And just the different things that you pick up and you were talking about, wow, how can I incorporate something like that? Or how can I change that and make that better?
So it's tough because, like, if I roll into town, people want, all right, what do we need to do? What do you want to do? And I'm like, man, you live here. Like, you tell me. You've seen this field. You know what these birds are doing. I mean, I'm not a magic pill. Like, if you tell me some things and give me some things to go on, I've seen enough and traveled enough. We can go through if, then, but if. If they're doing this, then we'll do this. But if they're not, if they're doing something different, then we'll try this. Just based on knowledge and whatnot. But
past practice.
But it's, from past practices. But, like, what they're doing on a daily basis. And if whatever's working, stick to it kind of deal. But I like to, like I said, when we roll into town with trailer drops, we've got our own gear and we've got our own blinds and we set up a certain way, do a certain thing. Well, you start falling into this little box, right? Like, this is how you do it. And I'm always an advocate of, you got to step back and just look at things and try to figure out where we can make. I lay awake at night trying to think of what we can do better. Like, we go out and shoot 40 birds today. I want to know how we can shoot 40 birds faster and better in the hole and I do that every day.
Right.
That's what drives me, So I've done this more this year, and I need to do it again, keep doing this, is just go hunt with other people and just sit in the under the blind and don't call. Let them hunt out their blinds, hunt out their decoys, do all that. Just sit there and see what they do.
You learn more.
Learn more. Just be a student, right? Because and I did that. I was hunting with my buddies out at St. Lawrence Outfitters, and they hunt A-frames, panel blinds off the edge. They put out 5 dozen silhouettes. That's what they hunt over, 5 dozen silhouettes.
That's nuts.
And they shoot into big wads of geese. These birds come off the river. They're flying super high in big bunches, and they're finishing them, and they're not hardly calling at all. They call enough to get the bird's attention, but most of the time the birds already see the decoys, and they come in.
How's the pressure around there? Is there a lot of pressure?
Oh, tons of pressure.
Really?
Yeah. These are some pretty smart, educated birds, and they hunt over one bag of silhouettes, and they kill. I don't want to get into how they set up on here because I don't want to give up their secret. But they're doing something pretty unique with their decoy setup, and it was very outside the box. And David Roy from St. Lawrence Outfitters, he's one of those guys that's always thinking outside the box, trying to stay a couple steps ahead of everybody else in what they're doing. And this is one of my deals I say all the time, Canada goose hunting in general, it's not an evolution. These geese don't get smarter. They've got a brain this big. They learn to adapt and survive. That's what they really want to do. They want to go back to that roost pond, and they want to fly out there and eat. And in the springtime, they want to make babies. Right? That's what they want to do. So it's more of a revolution. It's like the tactics that we're doing, like layout blinds used to be really popular. Now the A-frames are popular. Now the A-frames are starting to get a little bit like, they're kind of on to them, right? Well, we're starting to do some things like with the blind, like dressing it up and make it look more like an island and not a blind, right?
Right.
So you just got to keep doing that stuff. And it's like bell bottoms came back in, and they were popular back in the 70s, and then they came back in again. The stuff that our grandparents were using are good again. It's like short reeds used to be really, really effective 15, 20 years ago, and now the flutes are starting to get more popular. Yeah. It's just you just got to stay.
The lack of use, you think it is because they don't hear that?
I think they get conditioned smart. They get conditioned smart to the things that we do as hunters and the practices that we do. It makes them smart. I mean, think about it. What's the first thing that you do when you see a flock of geese?
Call. A lot of people, yeah.
Okay. So when birds get tough, put your call in your pocket, let them fly by, hit them with a couple of double clucks and a moan, quick moan, spit moan, or something like that, and hit a flag, and
just get their attention.
You just get because they're like, oh, nobody's home, just boom, and then all of a sudden, boom, 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 just do that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you noticed a couple of times, I would let the geese go by, and then I get them with a hard moan, and I just do that. Almost calling them more on the corners now than just power calling with them. And it's February. These birds have been hunted since September 1st.
Well, let me ask you a question. So you brought up a point earlier about so Shawn Stahl rolls into town, hunts with somebody you really don't know. How hard is it for you as somebody who's done a lot, seen a lot, been a lot of places, to have somebody come in and say, well, Shawn's here. He's gonna set up the way. He's gonna set up, and we're gonna kill 1 million birds. Is there a lot of pressure for you when you?
Well, there is, especially if it's just me and it's not my whole crew. There is, because if you don't get immediate buy-in on that first bunch, everybody's pointing a finger, and then sometimes they're just not your birds.
Yeah,
and I've talked to him about this before. The two biggest things that I see that get in the way of the average person that's just going out and hunting their success is two things. One, they try to overthink things. They absolutely overthink it. These birds are so simple. What are you pointing
fingers at, man?
You can talk yourself into doing the wrong thing by just keep over analyzing. I always say keep it simple. The old KISS method, keep it simple, stupid, right? And the second thing is, and it's rule number one in life, just calm down. Calm down, let the play develop. And we had, like that 3-pack, and we talked about this out in the blind. They come in, and they were swinging around the back. They come in, and they started to lift a little bit, and you called the shot. And I'm like, whoa, they were just about to do it.
As soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, man.
They're just about to do it. Because they do that. They come in, and especially when there's a decent amount of wind, they'll come in, they'll float in, and then they'll pick up a little bit. Well, most people take that as I'm getting out of Dodge, and sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But if they'll come in and they'll just float up and then
kind of
pop back down, and then the next couple bunches that we just let them do that, they just kind of did that and come.
Well, what I appreciate a lot about you coming in today and hunting with us the first time and meeting us for the first time today is any question that we had, you were there to answer, or to best your ability to say, hey, I don't know, I've never seen these birds, and I think that's a testament to you as well, because a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to tell you what they learned. They don't want to tell you how to get better, because they want to be that person to be, to say, hey, I'm better than that.
No, and I don't ever want to. I try not to ever be the person that I'm not better than anybody else. I'm a small town guy. I learned to hunt in public land. I won a couple goose calling contests. Had a couple things go right. Now I work in the industry. That's just how it is. But
it's very respectable. I mean, I respect that a lot out of you.
There's too many people that make a bad name in those instances that have a name for people to see and follow.
Well, and first impressions are a lot too. And I get tied up sometimes in, like you were running around here setting stuff up. I do that instead of just being, and the deal with answering questions is like I'm not giving you all my knowledge as much as I'm learning from you guys too. Like I'm giving, but I'm also taking something back too. Like I learn stuff every day, I learned that I screwed up today on the angle we set the blind up. I should have had a little more on it. I mean, I don't do everything perfect every day.
That's one of those things where bringing you in today was like, I had Paul in for a turkey hunt. Me and Paul went out turkey hunting. We meet in the morning. I hand him the decoys. I tell him where we're setting up or where we're hunting at the field. I said, all right, I'm just going to sit back and dude, I'm gonna learn from you. And I did the same thing with you today, because I feel like that's more important for me.
That list there, everything I screwed up today.
Well, it's a small list right now. It's off the top of the head right now, but no, it's just one of those things where I try to, like you're saying, like absorb bits and pieces. Like I went through an apprenticeship, electrical apprenticeship, so I take bits and pieces from every journeyman and make it one big.
Make it work for you.
Right. And just because they did it this way doesn't mean it's going to work for me. So I try to take it from you, or I try to take it from people that are...
You can validate. Like some things that I do may not work for how you hunt.
Right.
And I do that when I'm hunting with other people. Like when I hunt with other people, it validates if I see something go wrong, it validates that's why I don't do that. Or if I see something that worked, I'm like, wow,
right.
I need to write that down, put it up here,
Well, that's me today. I mean, we've never, besides up north for the middle zone opener, have put an A-frame in the middle of the field or a panel blind, whatever it may be.
I asked Al that today.
That field was tough.
Power lines.
We had a power line cut in the field. You had a pond on the other side of it. You had a road on two sides.
There's pinch points.
You're pinched in a little bit more than I would like. But when you put those blinds out in the middle of the field, and you say in the middle of the field, I'm talking anywhere off the edge, right? You always want to give them at least 2/3 of the field in front of you and 1/3 behind you. You want to give them room to work out front, and it's almost like the birds didn't have enough room with the house and the power lines and all that to get there and do that stuff out in front of us like they did.
That makes sense, yeah.
And I could have had that blind a little more on an angle, and we could have shuffled put some more, whatever. But I mean,
you can't complain 40 birds today.
No, but like I said, I'm always analyzing like, right. What could we do?
Do you think we could have bumped them out a little bit further, the decoys wise? We were too close.
I think the blind should have been
just cocked a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, if that road wasn't there, I'd have backed up another 30 yards.
Yeah.
How close?
Because I did move one time when I parked. I was like, hey, I'm moving another 20 yards.
Yeah.
They need more space.
How far do you usually run your decoys in front of a blind like that?
I'm not afraid to set up really big,
long,
and deep, just to give them things to look at that should be.
You're talking about your decoys, Fred, right? Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I did kind of sell them.
I want to make sure if we had to cut that out or what was going on. Okay,
hey, only good. Brian and Kyle caught onto that one, but that's okay.
And Brian,
we're a little older, Shawn, so it doesn't matter.
But I'm not afraid to set up a spread like that. And for starters, who else does that? It's different, right? It doesn't look like a spread of decoys when birds fly over it, right?
Yep.
And the other thing is, especially when you're hunting out in the middle, I mean, you're a box full of boogeymen, right?
Right.
And you have people moving around, making stuff. So I want them focusing in on other decoys and places to land, and then we can adjust that with our calling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're going to have birds land short or do different. I mean, that's just the nature of it. But I'd rather have birds trying to land short, try to come up, seeing the boogeyman circle and boogieing out. Like some of the birds got come down that straight down that line could. But yeah, so I'm big on that. And leave your bulk, your moth, especially in the late season, they want the darker spot where they want to land.
Makes sense.
And leave that. So I do that. And I think of it just like a parking lot. I mean, Walmart, Meijer, whatever. When you pull in there and you're looking for a parking spot, you're not going to park where there's already a vehicle, right?
Right. So
you put vehicles, decoys, where you don't want them to land, and you leave open spots where you want them to land, and you leave bigger spots where you want to focus them. And most people want to park up by the front door. It just use that analogy when you're looking at it. You put decoys all over the parking lot, right?
Well, I have two questions for you. Two, I guess, things. One you brought up today in the blind about the talking. Just in general. I mean, just, hey, they're over there, and you're yelling from one end of the blind to the other.
When you were out, were you never downwind of us when you were out?
Not that far, no. To be able to hear you.
If you get downwind, you can hear every word that's said in the blind.
It's like you're sitting on ice and just travel.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it'll go 150, 200 yards downwind, people talking in the blind. And you're thinking, oh, geese to the left, geese to the left, geese to the left. They can hear you.
Right.
They can hear you.
So, I mean, even close.
And some days, listen, some days they get up off the water and it's their day to die, and that's what they're going to do, right? And some days they just fly upside down, and there's nothing you can do to shoot them. But if you can take all the little things out, and that's why I said keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method, minimize your opportunities for defect. This is my engineering background. Minimize your opportunities for defects, and talking in the blind is one of them. And you say, well, did it affect him or didn't affect him? Well, I can tell you one thing. If you weren't talking, it wouldn't have, we don't know. Take that variable out. Because bottom line, especially if you're hunting a feed, they're coming there, right? If you don't show up and hunt, they're coming there.
Right.
So anything you do when you from pulling into that field to them coming to your decoys, anything you do is an opportunity for a defect, right? It's an opportunity to screw this hunt up. So minimize your opportunities for defects when you're doing this stuff. Give them plenty of room out in front of you to spin. Crosswind these birds, put sun on the front of your blinds, cast your shadow the other way if there's sun. If it's cloudy out, make sure you have grass over the entire front, because if you can see them, they can see you. Make sure you're wearing something dark and you're not moving. Bury your faces to the front. That kind of, just minimize your opportunities for defects to maximize your opportunity for success in the hunt.
Well, the other part of the question, which is I spot on, because we talk in the blind, but when you were saying that today, it was almost like, you know what? I mean, we're loud talking. We're not talking just like, hey,
if this deaf guy can hear what they're saying at the far end of the blind, I'm telling you.
Right. Well, who couldn't hear was Jimmy today, so we were okay, I think.
Mm-hmm. So the other question I have for you today, or now, is that so you set up an A-frame in a field.
Yeah.
You're putting a spread out. How much do you try to keep the eyes off of the A-frame, as far as like putting decoys off to the right, off to the left? So when they're coming in, they're not looking so much at the A-frame. They're looking more.
I don't like to. So if this is the A-frame and this table's the field, I don't like to try to pull them past the blind. They just don't want to do that. I like to try to put them right in here. If you're trying to drag them past, they just don't. They'll tend to want to push out and come back in. Same thing with why we always crosswind them. So if you're trying to, or if you're trying to shoot it with the wind at your back, they'll come in this way and then they'll go like this. They'll come in this way and go like this. They don't want to land with a wall in their face. They just don't. They don't do it. And that's why we crosswind them like that. And I try to keep the decoys, the bulk of them, like right in here. And then I'll tail this all out into here. And I'll run some out into here, that kind of stuff. And what you're trying to do is when they spin, the best chance at harvesting a Canada goose is on the first pass. And every pass after that gets tougher and tougher and tougher.
The third spin, they're out. That's what I usually say,
I just
right around that.
I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of them I just put my call down because I know. But yeah, is that first pin. So if you can get them when they come in, and a lot of them birds, they come out a lot higher than I thought they would today.
Yeah.
So they come out and there's not enough space in that field with the house and everything. They can't just get down. They're big birds. They can't just, so they had to come back and around and get down here. But I like to keep decoys out here because if you can get them down low out front, you're more apt to drag them up into the decoys as opposed to if they come straight down into you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's funny because I think we had that conversation multiple times this morning about running them long and just keeping an eye out. And I always say that pretty much every hunt about just stretching the decoys out and making that big. If there was a better use, and I hate using like the U like everybody else, and
or J,
or J. I try to do like an F almost where it's real skinny and the way. I mean, I'll put them out 150 yards, keep it skinny, get a little bit thicker. Then might be like a little slot that sticks out a little bit, and then it gets a little bit thicker, and then the end of the F is out. But even if the wind is strong, I'll throw them way out this way because I know they're not going to get that far, and if they do, they're going to be right in front of us, and we should be able to have a shot. And I'll keep it skinny and keep the big bulk, left or right, depending on the wind, obviously.
Yeah, and I said it before, I'd rather deal with birds trying to land 70 yards short than birds coming up over you 40, 50 and flaring.
Right.
100%. Yeah. Speaking of that, the next thing I would like to bring up is, what do you think of silhouettes in general?
I like them. I would have used them today.
Because of the cloudy?
If we could have got them in the ground. I use them in the sun too.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I like them. They tend, I think people want them too much. The farther you spread them out, the better, more effective they are.
Now, Tangle Free has the black and whites, and then it's got like the
some
flocking.
In the trailer, yeah.
Do you think that is a factor? Because I feel like a lot of the silhouette spreads has got a shine to it during the sun.
A flocked silhouette. Let's go back to silhouettes usage. I will not use
just paint.
A printed.
Yeah.
No, they shine so bad, and it's that angle too. So I can't do this, but when the sun comes up and it's hitting that flat surface, so the sun's coming up here and it's hitting that surface. It's that first 2 hours where that shine. It's like a mirror coming back at them, and it's just not a lot you can. I mean, I've tried angling them, like this, and turning them down. The first half hour after shooting, especially in September, October, is the money time, right? Yeah. So it's tough. The fully flocked ones are bang on. I will use those. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Kyle is, and I am too. I'm not saying just Kyle, but we're not big fans of silhouettes because we've hunted over them before.
You've had bad experiences.
We've had some bad experiences.
Yeah.
Well,
I would have loved to have seen what would have happened out there today with 1 to 1.5 bags of silhouettes and nothing else. I think we could have tore them up.
One of the things for me with silhouettes is we were talking about with like the layout blinds compared to the panel or A-frames. In Michigan here, they're seeing silhouettes. There's not a single hunter. Well, I shouldn't say not a single because we don't have silhouettes, but there's a ton of hunters that at least have 6 silhouettes in their garage that they can just easily, they go out a couple times a year, and they're seeing that all the way down. So
they are, but I could show you some things off camera. But
let's do that.
You could try, and maybe change your mind.
Because I mean, we've talked about bulking that up
that.
with our spread.
They're good. They're a tool, and I feel like when I do these podcasts and seminars, I'm a broken record. They're just a tool. Like, like that at a construction site, they'd have a trailer just like mine set up. All kinds of tools in there, right? How many days a week do they go in there and pull every tool out?
Right.
They don't.
Maybe once a month.
And like my trailer, I had 4 sleeper shells. I had they didn't come out.
Right.
So there's 4 sleeper shells. We didn't even use all the full bodies, did we?
I think we did.
We did.
Yeah, we
okay.
did. Yep.
There's 3 bags of silhouettes, colored ones. There's 1 bag of black and white silhouettes in there.
And they're all flocked?
All flocked. And then I've got some wind socks in there, a bag of wind socks in there. Those are just tools. Now, we didn't pull them all out today, did we? We didn't use hardly any of them.
Nope.
And I think that's the trap that some people get into is they think they got to get, when they roll into a field like that, You know, it's like that field we went by after we hunted. Somebody's going to hunt there tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I always laugh when people laugh, but you know, when most hunters see that, they're like, they call it their buddy and their other buddy, and they're like, "Hey man, bring your 3 dozen. You bring your 3 dozen. You bring your 5 dozen. You know, just roll out there." And it's like, wow.
They don't need it.
No, you're hunting the X.
Yeah,
like hide, go hide. They're coming there.
Yeah.
You know,
you don't need to call.
Why booger it up? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I talk about that a lot though with our spreads. You know, depending on the birds, and it goes back to like the scouting aspect of it all for me. A lot of guys will just drive by that field, see it loaded, and then just drive right off. I'll sit there and just watch the birds and learn off of the birds, because you're going to learn more doing that than you are actually probably during the hunt, how they're set up, how they're coming in, whatever it may be. So understanding that you might only need the 2 dozen on a field that's absolutely loaded compared to unloading the trailer every single time. I mean, most of the time we're running only, let's say 3 to 4 dozen, even though they're giant feeds. But if you spread those 3 to 4 dozen out even enough, it looks like a lot more decoys than.
If you can hide and they are either coming there or they can see those decoys,
you're good.
You don't need a lot of times this last couple 18 decoys to 4 dozen, and they'll finish right up to them. You know, I just had way better luck. You got a lot less statues out there that aren't moving, that aren't fake. They're not you know.
Right. The other thing that I was impressed today, we talked about the little cattle panel blinds and breaking up, making it look like an island and stuff like that. And, you know, the evolution of what you're trying to do and not seeing certain things. I thought that was really neat, like just explaining to us today about how
the shadow
and what that was causing to do. And man, I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
Never thought about that one time.
Step back and look at it.
Yeah.
In the daylight. Yeah.
That was great. That was
kind of going back to what you said though, just simplifying what you got in front of you. If you really just sit back, calm down, and look at it.
Yeah.
It's a
Go
lot
ahead and
simpler.
take a chill pill.
Right.
Sit on your bucket.
A question that I've been running through my head and I'm trying to figure it out. Yesterday was the first phone call I've ever had with you.
Uh-oh.
And you're asking about the temperatures.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, you said 28 degrees.
Yeah.
Why 28? Like, what was the whole purpose of that? Because we've had it in this year where the snow's coming at 3. We'll get out there at 10, 11 o'clock, and the birds are already out there. Like, why 28 degrees?
Well, I mean, it's not a hard, fast rule. There's so many if then, but they know more about what's going on in nature than we do. And, you know, like last night, I see all the deer in the fields. I'm like, yeah, something's coming. Like they're out and then this morning, driving over here, the deer are out. And I was like, oh boy, we're going to see geese moving. And we did. I mean, we pulled in, we're setting up, and there's geese already going out to feed. You got a couple of people that had 400 or 500 geese
already in the field.
Already in the field. And I'm like, you know, generally they'll fly towards the warmest part of the day. Unless there's some kind of front or something coming, they want to get out ahead of it a little bit. You know, 28 degrees is kind of a good temperature where the soil's starting to warm up, the sun's on it, they can get stuff off the frozen ground. Like, you know, that field we're in, like you can see corn that the farmer, you know, didn't get.
Right.
But I mean, it's frozen. Like
you're
not getting it out. You couldn't kick it out, dig it out with a shovel, right?
Right.
So it doesn't really, they know that they can't get that, you know, so that why come out until the ground starts thawing out a little bit and get to it. You know, if it's 15 degrees in the morning and I know it's going to get to 40 degrees that day, I mean, somewhere right around freezing, that's when I want to be out there and set up.
Makes sense.
You know, but you're looking at other factors too. That there's an if then, but if it's cloudy, your butt better be out there because they're going to fly.
Right.
If it's sunny and not a lot of wind, there's not a lot of factors, especially in the late season, you probably ought to just go out there at 3 o'clock and hope they fly before shooting time.
Do you look at barometric pressure a lot?
I do. If it's falling, like I'm sure it was falling. Like, hey, it would have been nice to watch it today. Yeah, as it falls, they're rolling. The lower the barometric pressure, the more they just want to die. Mm-hmm. The easier they are.
The lower, you said? The
lower. Okay. And the higher it is, I mean, they just soon fly upside down and come into your decoy spread sometimes. When it's high pressure, there's usually no wind. The higher there's usually no wind. And the sun's shining real high still. You can hear everything. You know, you don't hear the crows and everything. That's when you really got to be on your game. If you're hunting, lay off the call a lot. Call them on the corners. Just call soft. You know, like today the wind's blowing. I was trying to blow my call loud, crack. I was trying to get that thing. The houses were off in the distance. I'm trying to get that call to echo off that, to use that to bounce sound, right? Because goose calls are highly directional. The wind's blowing this way at 10, say 15 miles an hour, whatever it was today, 10, 12, whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
Blowing this way. You're calling at geese up here, they cannot hear you in a 15-mile-an-hour wind more than about 100 yards. Right. Promise you. So, like, in a day like today, you could have walked out and around us and listened. What you could hear in here.
I pretty much did with all the walking.
Yeah,
that's pretty true.
But you're going to hear us more downwind than upwind, and that's why your decoys have to stand out, because you're calling decoys two different ways. You're calling them audibly with a call and visually with decoys. Decoys and a flag. That's what you're doing. You're using that flag to get them till they get into that sound cone where they can actually physically hear you.
Makes sense, yeah.
But that house, the house and barn was helping us out. That was allowing some of them geese that are further out than that goose call could normally carry.
Bounce off.
It was bouncing that sound off. And
so
letting it die.
How much of a factor do you think it plays later in the year?
But back to it, like, I cut you off here.
No, you're good.
But back to it, like, they're learning the sound of what these calls sound like. So being too loud, you want them to hear you,
but not blow them,
but not quite understand you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, what? And you're leaning, you know, like you can't hear somebody, you're leaning in, right? Same way with geese. You want them
like
to hear
Jimmy
you
all morning.
Yeah. You want them to hear you. You want to, like, what'd you say? Oh, boom. Oh, yeah. That's what I had to say.
It kind of reminds me of like a turkey, though.
So, but like when it's that high ceiling, high barometric pressure choke on that call, I'll even sometimes put a like a jersey glove on one hand just to muffle it, just to get, just so you're taking that tone out and be.
I've never thought about
more realistic.
That. Have you ever thought about that? Like because like Shawn says, that they know way more than, we know when the fish bite because of water temp. We know, the bareback, the deer movement and stuff, but birds and everything else, like you said, they know something's coming before we know.
Yeah.
They can feel that different than we can feel that. And, that's something that I think a lot of people don't look at.
So I get a lot of geese because we got the refuge there, a mile and a half from my house. I get a lot of geese in my yard all summer from middle of August, end of October. And they'll come every morning like clockwork, within 30 minutes of sunrise, usually when geese fly.
Yep.
If nothing extenuating weather-wise, about 30 minutes after sunrise, about when you start seeing geese fly in early season. Some days they don't show up right, like, where are they? Like, what happened? Did somebody jump the roof? What's going on? Nothing. And about 1 o'clock,
they're there.
all of a sudden, they're in the yard, and it's like, you don't ever come at 1. And about 15, 20 minutes later, boom, it starts raining. How do they know that, and why did they wait the whole time? I have no idea, but that's why we get up and go every day and scratch our heads at night and lay awake and try to figure these things out.
I'll tell you who didn't know was probably the weatherman. I didn't know the weather was coming like that.
One question. Another question I have for you, Shawn, is so Shawn Stahl comes out to a hunt. I'm not saying just Shawn Stahl, anybody. What is your number one rule for goose hunting? Is it going to be, I would imagine it's probably your hide, or is it going to be more your spread?
Number one rule is safety, and I did not do that today. Normally, I'll go down and they'll do a safety talk, even if I just do that.
I'm pretty adamant. I don't know if you heard me. Safety's on.
I did hear you, and I was grateful for that. Normally, I'll go and have a safety talk because I don't know. I mean, I've never hunted with any of you guys.
Right, Brian, yeah.
He's about the most unsafe guy. He's wielding that camera around, banging you.
He didn't mean it, Brian.
But
the same way.
It comes. So number one is safety. But that should be a given. So it's not even number one. Right. Number one is concealment. 100%. If you're hunting an X or traffic or whatever, and you're trying to fool these birds and you can't hide from them, don't even try.
Right.
And that's why we had the guys cutting grass. We're putting things out in front of the blind, trying to break it up and make it look less like a blind, do all that, blocking it out and breaking this up the best we possibly can. Looking back on it, we probably should have done a few more things, put some more grass on the ends and stuff like that. We still shot 40 birds. I mean, I'm sitting here bitching about it, but
no, but you're learning, right?
It's just I'm always trying to figure out, what did we do? Why did we better? How did I get lazy today? Kind of deal. So number one, concealment. Number two is decoys, where you have your decoys and how you have it set up. And number three would be calling and flagging last. Calling is probably the least most important. If you're hunting an X, it's probably the least most important ingredient in the whole aspect because they're coming there.
I was gonna say,
and if you're hid, you got decoys. They know where they're supposed to be. They'll come in without calling.
Yep.
Now, if you're running traffic, off the X, off the beaten path, off the line, that kind of stuff, then calling becomes more important. And when I say calling, I mean visually and audibly flagging. We had a couple of different flags, electronic flags and stuff going on, that kind of stuff to get their attention. Right. So,
how much of a factor do you think it is later in the year? I try, there's been a couple hunts where I've thrown the decoys way out with the wind in our face, almost like a peekaboo kind of hunt, like on the permanent blind.
You don't have a time, yeah, because of what you have,
right? So you have to throw the decoys way out, and you got to shoot them.
So you're hunting a permanent blind kind of deal.
Just example wise, where you can't change nothing up.
Yeah, because we hunt weekends. That's all we hunt.
Weekend warriors, but I mean that's it. But I try to tell everybody that is calling. When these birds get right over top of you, there's no decoys around or anything like that. Do you think that really plays a factor, or?
Some days I do, and some days I don't. Some of them birds today, you had to call to get them to do that deal.
Right.
You're almost trying to put them in a trance and a spell. Sometimes, you can do realistic calling, or you can find that note that
they like that day.
They react to. It's just it's like you have a beam going to them or something, put them in a trance kind of deal. I don't know. But I don't go out into a field. I don't even look at every flock. This is how I'm going to call today.
Right.
Right. This, I'm not calling much today. I'm just calling on the corners, or I'm power calling today. It's every bunch is a little bit different, and you just try to read how they're reacting, but also their elevation and what you want them to do. I really was trying to get them to commit and come down lower.
Right, they were all
sooner,
high,
but they're coming out high with that power line, and then they really couldn't get down low until they got off behind us in a corner, and then they were trying to work it up, which was kind of weird because you're at a crossroads and they're doing this.
Right.
That was one thing that was one of the most impressive things today. There wasn't one flock that was just beelining right for our field. A lot of them were just it was
flying
traffic,
by. We basically ran traffic,
which is my favorite thing to do.
It's so satisfying. My buddy Jim Ronquist says, you just talked them into giving up
somewhere
they didn't want to be.
Yeah,
Yep, 100%.
That's one thing that I truly enjoy.
And you got to take, you got to remember too, in how you judge success on, running traffic. If you just get a couple bunches to do it, man, you won, right? You won. And when you've got that train going on that line, and they're going and going, and you're pulling a couple off there, and they're doing this, and then you just get sucked back into the train, and that just happens. You just don't get mad. That's just what happens.
Yeah, we talked too, like you're saying about some days they'll do it, some days they won't. We were talking to the guys from Combat came in, and we were talking to them about. He was talking about water swatting. Birds, and a lot of guys look down on people water swatting birds and, getting them to land. And he says, well, ultimately, what are you trying to do? You're trying to land those birds. You're trying to get them. You won. You won the game by fooling those birds. Just like you're saying today, running traffic, you won.
And I'll take this a step further. What is my business how you hunt?
Right.
Everybody's got an opinion. If you water swatting is fun to you, it doesn't matter what I think.
Right.
Because it's your hunt.
Right.
You're out there enjoying the outdoors the way you want to enjoy the outdoors. You're not breaking a law. There's no law that says you can't land them and water swat them. I mean, you fooled them. If you land them, you fooled them. Water swat them, ground swat, whatever. If that's how you want to do it, good. I'm happy for you. And that's one of the biggest things that I don't like about this industry is everybody is so cutthroat and hates this guy because he does this and does that, and not go, gosh, man, you guys shot 40 geese today? That's awesome. That's freaking cool. Right. No, Most of the waterfowlers that go, oh man, yeah, I bet they did this and they did that. No, I sat and watched them do that and they didn't finish that one bunch. And tomorrow I'm gonna get downwind them guys tomorrow. It's like, come on, man, just be happy for people.
I like that.
For getting out there and having fun and not doing anything wrong, because there's absolutely no. Same with people that pass shoot. I don't like pass shooting. I don't believe in it, but I'm not gonna knock whoever if they want to go do it. That's your game. Go do it. And if it's affecting me, I'll just go down the road further,
I mean, there's a certain person that I could think of that I've talked to you about, if they get the rocks off that way with
more power
shooting those kind of birds like that. I mean, that's
Well, look at deer hunters. Deer hunting is the same thing. So
you got deer hunters.
You shot a spike?
You shot a spike. Or you shoot a bow. Yeah, I shoot you shoot a crossbow. Yeah. Right. Like, who cares?
Right.
You're out there.
Yeah.
With numbers going down.
Here we are infighting as hunters when we need a solid voice to go against the antis. Now we're just breaking each other apart. Like, come on.
I like that a lot. That's a good explanation about that. It's your hunt. It's your if you're not breaking the law and you're doing nothing wrong with the law, good for you. Yeah. You had a lot of fun and you shot 40 today. I only shot 20, man. That kind of stinks. No, it's not. You shot 20 birds today. You fooled 20 birds into giving it up.
How many people have we taken out, though, where we shoot, let's say, 10, and they're like, oh, man, today kind of sucked. And I get to that point sometimes because I know the work, like scouting aspect of it all, and I know what I was expecting, and it's just kind of a bummer for me to a point. But how many people have we taken out, and it's like 10 birds? I mean, that's 10 birds, man.
I think that becomes too is like what you're talking about, pile pictures, right? People want to see the big pile pictures instead of shooting the one.
That's today was probably about the 5th pile picture I took all year. Yeah. It's
because
to me that's not the.
I try not to post.
Right, that's not the end game, right? Yeah. The pile picture's not the end game.
But the problem is social media is starting to accept. They want to see the pile,
right?
And you got the people they're looking at the pile because they're judging you. And they'll zoom in and be like, "Oh, they were 2 birds short," or or they, "Oh, they didn't really shoot them," or they're looking in the background, they're looking for the water tower in the background, or the cell, or the barn, they're trying to figure out their internet scouting. Yeah.
Yep. Well, that happens a lot, believe me.
Yeah. That's the biggest. I tell people all the time, if it wasn't for working in the industry like this, I would turn social media on and you'd never know what I shot.
Right.
Yep.
Because there are so many tailpipe chasers around that just want to run around and figure out where you're at, how they can, get in that spot, the field, or downwind you, or do all that stuff. I mean, like, come on, just learn how to hunt.
Right.
There's a
put the work in.
Prime example of a guy that also had permission on the field today that we hunted. Used to take him out quite a bit, where we went out and shot 9-man limit or whatever it was that day. Next thing you know, we're like, where'd you go? And he's trying to ask for permission on the field, and it's like, you just said we're out there with me. I'm taking you out on these fields.
Or going to the neighbor's door.
And it's just the neighbor's door today.
That's we won't go down that rabbit hole. There's a lot of etiquette issues that
right.
You could do an entire podcast on hunting etiquette.
Sure.
You could.
What's in the works for your fishing this year, man?
Lots
of fishing.
Lots of
fishing. Did you ever come out this way to go walleye fishing at all?
I do not really. No, been mainly bass fishing the last couple of years. I'd hit St. Clair quite a bit, but from my house to the boat launch up there by the Air Force base, Selfridge. So the Selfridge boat launch from my house is within 15 minutes of my house to Traverse City boat launch.
Oh, wow.
A lot less people, a lot less traffic. And I say 15 minutes, but once you hit Ann Arbor, you don't know how long it's going to take to get to the boat launch, right? You just don't know. So, I mean, it could be a 4 or 5 hour trip there, or, but it's 3 hours and 15 minutes from my house to the boat launch in Traverse City. And if I get up there and the wind's blowing, there's about 25 lakes in the area that you can go jump on and get out of the,
lakes up there, yeah.
Get out of the wind and fish. I fish a lot around home too, but.
Was it last year you had a bunch of boat problems, I heard? Was it, or 2 years ago? I know 1 year you had a bunch of problems out there bass fishing with either a motor or a trolling motor, maybe. I thought I heard. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I'm hearing stuff then.
My
do a lot of walleye.
My live scope took a dump on me.
Maybe that's what it was. Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I kept having a fuse blow on it. Yeah.
Oh.
No, largemouth or smallmouth?
Yes.
That doesn't matter. Yeah.
I mean, it's two different types, though. You know what
I mean, I'm very intrigued by smallmouth. I'm relatively new. I mean, I've caught smallmouth my whole life, but never really targeted them like largemouth. It seems like there's more and more lakes around home that have smallmouth in them, and you're able to target them now. So I do like smallmouth. They're mean, man. There's nothing like you take a 3-pound smallmouth and they fight more than a 6-pound smallmouth. I mean, they're just mad. Like they get
the young.
You
ones,
get a 6-pound one, and it's like his shoulders and his neck are tied together, and he can't really wiggle. But you get a 3-pounder, and I mean, he will go. Yeah,
might as well be playing for Dan Campbell. Mm-hmm. Got the grit, but a kneecap off of you.
Oh, we've had that out in the lake. We do a lot of walleye fishing in the spring, and you'll hook onto a smallmouth, and boy, you hooked onto a smallmouth because he ain't coming in easy.
Maybe this year we'll try to get you over for some walleye fishing. We got the boats right in the water all the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes it easy. Yeah.
And then unless my dad's got muskrats in the boat. He had a muskrat last year tear all of the electrical out and the flooring out, and it was kind of a mess.
I covered a boat one time, and we got some bad weather, and my daughter comes, gives me a phone call, and says, hey, you got to come over and check the boat. She lives right here on the water, and there was a grass hut built behind my boat. And I got in there, and I was like, what in the heck? It ate my carpet. It ate all the electrical stuff. It tore up my fish finders. Then it got up underneath my dash, started chewing all the wires. I had to pull off the whole gunnel wall panel.
Did you go straight Caddyshack on them?
Well, blow up the whole canal.
I would have, but when I pulled that gunnel wall off, it was dead inside of my gunnel wall.
Well, the first one was you undid the tarp or whatever, the boat cover.
Yeah,
there was a limit of walleye eating out just straight bones laying in the bottom of his boat.
It was just laying
and
there.
then like the next time, like a month later, that's when all the electrical.
Yeah,
that's what lifts are for.
It was a mess.
It was terrible, but that's we got it all fixed and got it back in the water. So it's
one thing I want to say again is thank you for coming out today.
Thanks for the invite,
man.
This,
getting to meet you, man.
Cool.
I remember back in high school. Me and Van, one of my buddies from school, we were just getting into waterfowl hunting, and I didn't know much about it. And I remember him telling me that you had a tarsal band in your backyard, and you're watching it, and you're not even shooting at it. And I'm looking at him like, I don't even know what that is. I don't know what you're talking about. And hearing your name then, and now being able to sit here and share a blind with you this morning, and it's just very fortunate to be able to have this opportunity, and thank you, Brian, for being able to get us together. Even though it's been like 3 times since we've been trying to get you over.
Hey, I'm just fortunate to be able to get out and go hunting and meet new people. That's kind of what it's all about, really.
Oh, I told you that this morning. I messaged you in 2019 about our panel blinds, and I mean, you were so generous to come back and just tell me, hey, I have some stuff in the works, so stay tuned. And that was just I hear these stories. People don't get back to people when they do. And sometimes you get busy. Like, it was my birthday. I got like 8 million. And I'm going through them in the blind and going through them in the blind. And I finally told him, I was like, I just got to do this tonight. But if somebody messages me, I feel like I need to get, I
feel bad if I don't.
I feel bad if I don't get back to them.
It's me, though.
And try to be honest with them. And with voice to text now, you can rattle these because these fat thumbs here are not good at typing. But try to get back. It's just the right thing to do. So, they got a legitimate question and answer it,
Or the best you can. Yeah. I mean, that's, and I think a lot of times too is, and Kyle was the same way a little bit too. And even me, when you're younger, it's hard to ask, somebody for information, or it's hard to.
I don't think kids these days, it's as hard for kids these days as it was for us.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Because like and that's where I go back to is when I was first starting to learn out how to call in contests and call in short reads, the only people you had to ask or talk to were the other people calling in contests, because really most of the hunters were still blowing big rivers or old 800 stuff like that around here, so you really couldn't, and you just didn't know who you could trust because they're competing against you.
Yeah.
So were they really giving you honest information? Kelly Powers and I kind of teamed up, and we were very honest and helped each other out a lot, because we both believed in the same thing. But I just told myself, I had a lot of people tell me the wrong things and the wrong information, and I did not like that, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. And I just said, if people are trying to figure this out and get into the sport and want to learn, get them in the right direction, help them out, just be a good human being, and it's just going to go a long way. And
that you are. There's no doubt about that, and it's very appreciative.
Cool.
What last question for you, unless you got another one. Ducks or geese? I know you like getting on that boat of yours.
I just
back and forth.
Yeah, remember Virgil Ward, the fishing shows, wherever the fish are biting, that's where we're going to be. Well, wherever whatever's flying, it's where we're going to be. And if it's ducks or geese, I kind of go. My whole life, I've went ducks, geese. I grew up. When I was a kid, there was more ducks hunting opportunities than geese, and then gradually got into geese, and then won the goose calling contest, become known for goose hunting, worked for Rich and Tone. They got 2 world duck calling champions. I'm the goose world champion. So I kind of get pigeonholed into goose hunting. Jimbo's now working for Drake, doing a few things for us now. So it's just John and I doing all this. And this year, Brian and I got a lot of really awesome duck content.
And
it's badass. And I mean, for me, and we go back to what we were talking earlier, it gets so monotonous, dropping the trailer door, setting up the panel blind, putting a spread out, that you get kind of in that grind. I hate using that word grind. None of what we do is a grind. If you're out there hunting, this is not a grind. You're having fun, and that just bothers me. But I just get into this frame where it's just monotonous.
Right.
And changing up, hunting out of a boat, hunting off the shore, doing different things, being in the timber, doing all this. It just keeps you fresh. This is the first year that I've went from September 1st to February 8th today, and I'm looking forward to going tomorrow and the next day. And when the season closes, I'm not going to be like, glad it's over. Just staying fresh and hunting everything, and that's been
tomorrow
fun.
Should be a fun one. I mean, I think Kyle can attest. Like, we can't promise the same results today, but it's not. Me and you talked, Shawn, earlier about. It's not the results that it's meeting the new people. It's getting out there, and we've hunted with Brian and Chris this year too, and I appreciate both those guys, and meeting the right people, being around the right people means everything to me. Having the right people out in the blinds, just making those relationships is so much more to me now than it was maybe
as we get older.
As we get older, just means a little bit more to me. Yeah. So, but I personally just want to thank you again for coming in.
And like tomorrow, win, lose, or draw. I mean, this whole 2 days is beyond any expectations I had. Win, lose, or draw. Let's just go out there and try to finish one bunch.
Yep.
Then we'll try to finish another one. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Yep. We had fun doing it.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Appreciate
it. I will put you on the screws here, though. I've had 2 zeros all year. 2. And one of them we knew was going to be a 0, and the other one we just quit. We didn't wait till shooting time, so I'm going to put you on the screws.
Okay. Well, maybe it'll be a squirrel in a tree or something like that. We can get one
it's all legal.
That's right.
Get one on the board. But, Shawn, I appreciate it, man. I had an absolute blast today, shared a blind with you, and just thinking about it, me and Chris, I'm like, man, do you realize just what we were doing out there and who we're with? It's just I know you don't look that, but it's just one of those things for me. It's pretty crazy starting off with me and my dad and seeing the connections and the friendships that we've gained over the years. It's
through waterfowling. And waterfowling truly brings people together from all walks of life,
which is awesome.
To be out in the field. It's a common denominator in a lot of people in the world.
Right. So
sharing the same goals.
Yeah.
Well, for everybody listening in on this week's podcast, Shawn, again, I appreciate it. Dad, thank you for coming on today, and I guess until next week, I appreciate it again.
Thanks, Shawn.
Guys.